Shelby Seidler's a agent with the Serhant brand in Palm Beach County, Florida. She's joining the podcast today. Shelby, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. So the weather in Palm Beach in February has got to be pretty much perfect right now.
It's been chilly and everybody's
Has it?
freaking out about it. Yeah. Like every morning I ask Alexa, what is the weather out? And if Alexa tells me that it's 70, I'm grabbing a sweater. And it's been like 50s, 60s. It's been like crazy.
Wow.
None of us know how to handle it.
Yeah, it's unusual, right?
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for jumping on this recording with me and taking some time out of your busy schedule to join the podcast. This will be great. You're the first broker I've had with the Serhant brand, and uh, and the first one in South Florida to be on the podcast. So this is going to be awesome. It's a market that I've really wanted to highlight. I've wanted to connect with someone in your market, so this will be great. Shelby, before we start diving into like your business and your market and tips and advice for realtors, share a little bit of a background on yourself, hometown, education, and what drew you to real estate as a career.
Yeah. So I grew up I was actually born in Florida, born in Hollywood, Florida, bounced all around, probably moved like once a year. I've been to a lot of different schools. Lived in Argentina during middle school years. Came back, lived in Gainesville, and then for high school, joined the military when I was 18, and that sent me to Pennsylvania. Once I was in Pennsylvania, and I started doing schooling because Penn State was right there. So I was starting to take a couple classes. Once I got out of the military, I finished my full degree in psychology from Penn State. And, I came, this was in 2017 that I finished my degree and drove back down to Florida. And I just remember having a conversation with my dad one day. He was like, "What do you want to do with your degree?" And I just very ignorantly was like, "Oh, I want to wear like business clothes and talk business." And he was like, "You could get your license, your real estate license." And then that was it. That night, I went home and I started the application with the state and all that. I had my license a month later. I got a job cold calling for a company. That was my first real estate job, was a salaried cold calling job. It was like calls, like warm leads were coming, not warm leads, but cold leads kind of coming in. And then I met my previous partner, and we partnered in real estate together for several years. And then when we split ways, we had like, I don't know, 500, 600 mutual friends on Facebook and everything. Like our businesses and our lives were so intertwined that I just said, I'm going straight cold calling. I'm not going after any sphere of influence people. This is about 2 years ago. So I just completely jump started a business, my own business. I felt like I was starting from ground zero 2 years ago. And so I just started cold calling for sale by owners and expireds. And that's sort of, how I would say that's the birth of my real estate career, because everything was on my back. Everything was my own responsibility. It wasn't like, oh, we're partners in this. Like, we just had so many people before with my previous partnership. We just had so many people that we knew that kind of came to us, and mainly because of my partner. So it was a little scary to go off on my own. So that's everything in a nutshell.
Yep. I tell you, that's an amazing way to start a real estate career is by, uh, you know, kind of getting your hands dirty with cold calling. I mean, that's the part that I think a lot of agents really dread,
Hmm.
but it's such an important part of a successful real estate career, I think, and that's a skill that I think that's kind of a skill that's rare to find in this industry these days. I think it once was very common, but I think that's a very helpful and important skill to have in this industry today.
Yeah, it definitely is. A lot of people shy away from it. When you say that not a lot of people do it, when you do cold call, it feels like the whole world is cold calling
Sure.
because
Yeah.
they're getting all these other calls. So when I hear people all the time like, wow, not a lot of people do that. I'm like, oh yeah, a lot of people do it because we're all calling the same leads. But yeah, and I would say there's probably, for anybody that's listening, that is newer and maybe doesn't know, where to start with any of that. Do you want me to give a piece of advice on that and,
Yeah.
talk about my
Yeah,
mindset?
absolutely. Sure.
Yeah, so I didn't even know. I just watched a video of Jackie Kravitz. I just was like, all right, if we're going to do this, we got to like look up a YouTube video and we just have to do that because it can get so confusing. And I would say Jackie Kravitz's approach on YouTube was like very direct. And so I sort of just came up with my own thing because I'm not a very pressuring type person, and it's just not my personality. So when I would cold call, I started with for sale by owners, and my background is in psychology, so I was already pretty obsessed with the psychology of sales. I watched the YouTube videos that Jordan Belfort, The Wolf of Wall Street. Jordan Belfort
Mhm.
posted, well, I don't think he posted them. I think they were leaked, and I think he probably went after them and got all his videos back because you have to pay for these videos now. But it's called the straight line method, and it talks about. Are you familiar with that?
Vaguely, yeah. But go ahead.
Yeah. So he talks, immediately in the first line when you cold call is, there's so much interesting psychology that goes into the vocals of cold calling, and I keep it very relaxed on my end, but he goes, his is like, "Hi, is John there?" And it's like very punchy, and he's like, "Yeah, this is Jordan from Florida last year," and he does these upticks. I mean, this isn't exactly like what he says, but these upticks in his voice create 3 micro questions. And so he talks a lot about saying things without verbally saying them. So your prompt, people don't like to feel stupid. So when you say, "This is Jordan," like it would be like if I meet people all the time that I can't remember I met, and they're like, "Hi, nice to see you again," and I roll into it. I'm like, "Yeah, nice to
Yep.
see you. How are you doing?" It's similar with what he's doing on the phone with the psychology of, "This is Shelby from Serhant in Florida," and the person's like, "Yeah, yeah, okay,"
Yeah.
and they're in their mind they're saying, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," to those 3
Right.
micro questions, and so you're already getting like a weird psychological yes in their minds. So I started getting big into the psychology of it all, and he talks about, even another little tip here is, he talks about creating scarcity, and when you're talking about something over the phone, you don't say, "It's scarce, there's not a lot of it out there." You say, you bring your voice down and you say, "Listen, I have something that may be coming on the?market. And already, by me dropping my tone down and speaking a little quieter, it pulls someone in, and they're like, "Yeah, what is it? Like, why?" So you're already creating scarcity. So there's a lot of these tips and tricks that I learned that I don't know that. I think it's all come together when I started cold calling, is what I'm trying to say. So when I would call for sale by owners, and I didn't have a lot of money to pay for leads. So I literally went to Zillow.com and went to for sale by owners and got they're advertising their number right there. And I would just say, "Hey, this is Shelby. I'm a realtor in the area, and I see your property. I see you're trying to, obviously you're trying to sell it yourself. You just put it up. But I'm curious if you have considered using a realtor at all." And I'm kind of like, I'm a friend. I'm like, "Is this something you've even thought about? Is this like a weird question? Is this, and I think because I came from such a friendly perspective that it kind of put their guard down. And so now it was just a conversation of like, "Has it ever occurred to you?" And they were like, we've thought about it, but, we wanted to try this first. And I'm like, I totally get it. And then I'd roll into whatever, my biggest thing was to just try to get in the door, to just try to meet them, try to see them in person. And if not, then I would be the last one standing, continuing to call them. I kept a yellow pad. I wasn't even like I didn't have this fancy database that I was using. I kept a literal legal pad, and I would write down their phone number, the address, the price, because they would take it down, or they would take down their phone number, or they would change the price. And so if they changed any of those, I would look them up again. And if I saw like, oh, they like dramatically changed the price, like they took it down 100,000, I'm like, they're getting antsy. They don't know what they're doing and they're scared, or something like that. Like little things like that. Or maybe they'd change their number because they got so bombarded, but I wrote down their phone number and their name and their dog, from barking in the background that they said their dog's name to me or something. I wrote down little details like that. So then the next time I called and I was following up, I was more of a friend. And I was like, yeah, I just saw you dropped it, like 100,000. What's going on? And so just those follow-ups and everything, I think they learned to trust me more. And that's just how I started, is just, just calling them and continuing to stay in touch.
We dove right into like the good stuff. I love this. This is awesome. So a lot to unpack there. I want to back up just a little bit. And by the way, I love the psychology of sales too. I'm constantly consuming, experts through YouTube and blogs and books. And Jordan Belfort, of course, is legendary. And embarrassingly, I haven't really looked at much of his advice or content, or that's definitely something I'll dive into. But backing up a little bit is, I wanted to talk to you about how you mentioned, we're all calling the same leads, and it feels like when you're cold calling that the whole world is calling these people, these sellers or buyers or whoever the lead may be. And that reminded me recently of a mortgage broker here locally who reached out to me, and his company had lost a great relationship they had with a new production home builder, and it was really a gravy train, right? So they were locked in, and he wasn't doing for about 2 years much networking or marketing. I mean, understandably so. It was they had a pipeline of new home buyers. So when that went away, he looked at his business and said, "Man, 2025, I got to get back into it. I got to get back into marketing, networking." So I have this local platform that I've produced over the last 5 years here in my market that has been fairly successful, and it's gotten a pretty decent reach. And he found me through that platform, and he reached out and he said, "Hey man, look, he told me the story. He said, I'd love to meet for a beer or coffee, or let's chat." And he goes, during our conversation, he said, I haven't done much of this cold calling in a while for to connect with referral partners. He goes, "I'm sure that your phone, like I'm probably the fifth mortgage broker you heard from today." And I told him, I go, "No, in fact, you're the only one I've heard from this year." so you're, even though it feels like they may be being bombarded, a lot of times chances are no one has contacted them, no one has called them. And so just something to keep in mind, I think, for listeners who might be afraid of cold calling, there's a good possibility that you're the only one that has contacted them, and yep. that they'll be receptive to your phone call.
And I think I would like to add as well, you have to steer your business, and you have to decide what direction you want to go in. So if you and it can be, you can really tailor this business to be what you want it to be. So I started saying, I want to go after million plus. And I felt like what was kind of coming to me, I got into a building, when I first did it for sale by owner. I did a for sale by owner, and it was like for 300,000. And I got into this building, and I ended up selling like 3 units over the course of like the following like 6 months or something. I mean, it was cool. It was like a referral. It was like the gift that kept on giving, really.
Mhm.
And they're in that 300 range, and I realized that you're gonna get more of wherever you're aiming. And so I said, okay, while this is coming to me, and while I'm doing this, while I'm managing the under $1 million that seems to be coming to me, I'm going to steer the ship in the direction of $1 million plus, because I want $1 million plus. I love customer service, and I felt that if I wanted to give excellent customer service, I can't really do high number of units. I can't do like a lot of people to give excellent customer service, at least just in the beginning of my business. I don't have a whole staff, you know? So I started cold calling more, the for sale by owners, you don't see very many of them that are $1 million plus. So that's when I started going after expireds. So that's how I got a listing for 5.5 million. I just said, I set my goal. I said, I want a $5 million listing. I want a $5 million listing. And I think when you look for something and you just keep pushing towards it, then you'll find it. And so when you get that, $5 million listing, you're like, all right, who else in this area? Like, let's spread into this area. Let's door knock. Let's farm it. Let's call other people. And so I've slowly trickled in developing relationships with other people along that street and in the neighborhood. You can very quickly change the perception of yourself. You just have to decide what direction you want to go in.
I've been taking tons of notes. You hit on a really good point of how you can steer your business, and it's going to go in the direction in which you steer it.
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, it reminds me of a conversation I had with Ben Bowen, who was on the podcast not too long ago. He's a broker here in the Charlotte Lake Norman market where I am, and is consistently a $70+ million producer year after year, and not a big team. When he launched his brokerage back in 2010 or 2011, he basically looked at his goal. He set his goal, and he said, "I want to get to $30 million a year in revenue or sales." And the average price of a home in Charlotte at that time was around 300,000. It's a lot higher now, but around that time it was 300,000. He said, "Well, to get there, I'll need to sell 100 homes at 300,000, or I can sell 30 homes at $1 million." So he said that the 30 homes a year sounded much more appealing. so he branded his company and his marketing strategy around connecting with those buyers and sellers, and it was extremely successful. He just stayed focused on it. It obviously takes time, right? But stayed focused on it and consistent in his branding and his marketing and his outreach. And that reminds me of a lot like go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, I just wanted to say, I heard something the other day, because I think when people think of going after $1 million plus, they think, I have to, this is something that a lot of people told me, like, you need to go where these rich people are going, and you need to hang out where they're hanging out and all this stuff. And then you get in those environments. And I would say, especially in Florida, like, there's a lot of people that you can't tell if they actually really have money or not. I think a lot of people show. Either way, I'm just not that type of person to, look over and be like, oh, he's wearing a Rolex, now's my time to move in. I'm just like not that type of person. And so I felt a pressure to be everywhere, to do everything. I'm not that extroverted. I'm really not. And that was a lot for me to walk into a room and be like, all right, you're in the wealthy room, like, now mobilize. And I didn't know where to start. So I heard something the other day where this girl was like saying how when you're building your business, stop trying. And other people go about their businesses different ways, but she was like, stop trying to network and until you become someone that people want to network with,
Mm-hmm.
and build yourself up to be someone that other people are like, ooh, I want to talk to her in the room. Be that person. And I think that building up social media, building up your just cold calling, I just feel like that is the quickest way, is cold calling, to get to where you want to go, because these leads, that you're calling people who have homes worth the price range that you are looking for. And you're having many more conversations, in my opinion, than if you were to go socialize first and you're just like, going cold turkey into a room.
Absolutely. That reminds me of something I read in a sales book by a sales guru, and I don't know, I can't remember offhand who it was, but it's a point that stayed with me for a long, long time, and that is, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And
Hmm.
what the author meant by that was, it's not who you want to network with, it's who wants to network with you. What value do you bring to the table? And that's something I think is really important to keep in mind when it comes to uh, working with referral partners and reaching out and forming valuable referral partnerships. Is of course you want to network and connect with those who are serving the clients that you want to serve, but
Mm-hmm.
before you think about what they can give or bring to you, I think it's so important to understand and be able to identify what value is it that you're going to offer them. Value first, and be able to bring that to the table first ahead of time. Um,
I
yeah,
love that.
awesome. Have you heard of Sabri Subi,
No.
the marketing guru down in Australia? He owns King Kong, an agency called King Kong.
No.
He's prolific on YouTube. I highly recommend checking out a couple of his YouTube videos. I bought he has a book too, which is really, I understand why he published it. It's really a lead magnet, but it's an excellent book nonetheless. So I did buy it, and it's really cool. But he started his career very much in a boiler room in England. He grew up poor, and he cut his teeth in his career cold calling, 200 cold calls a day in a boiler room in London at age 19. And he's like, a lot of his stuff on cold calling is really, really interesting. So it puts things into perspective. I highly recommend him. I'll send you a link.
Yeah, send me a link. Tell me, what's the name of the book?
Um,
Or his name is Sabri what'd you say?
yeah, it's Sabri, and the last name is Subi, Sabri Subi.
Okay, I'm gonna look him up.
And the uh, the book is, and it's crazy because it's sitting on my nightstand, and I I look at it weekly, and I forget if it's like sell like crazy. Okay, I didn't think that was it, but yeah, it's called Sell Like Crazy.
Okay.
Um, and the tagline is, um, I don't remember what the tagline is, but anyway, it's got just a ton of really great practical advice
I love
from a
that.
real world perspective. It's really cool. All right, so I digress as I often do. I think that, I love that you brought up understanding your avatar, like having a direction for your business, understanding how important setting goals. Goal setting is so important with achieving, that in your business. And
Mm-hmm.
also, not networking for networking's sakes. Like, don't just go join the local yacht club, right? For just, be a little bit more strategic.
Yeah, 100%. I would say, with my previous partner, we were so social. I mean, we were out 6 nights out of 7 nights of the week, and it would run me into the ground because I can't. I mean, you're having a drink or two, and then you're eating out and stuff, and I just feel like, I think that something I realized, I would say, in the last few months is, if you want to succeed to any great extent, I think you have to start treating yourself like an athlete. like your body like an athlete. And I would say, so I cut out alcohol actually, starting December, and I've committed to a year of no alcohol. And I will say that not having to mentally recover, and I don't even, I wouldn't even drink crazy, but it was, for me, it was the days after, that, and then it was also like when I would drink, I'd be like wanting to eat badly. And then when I eat badly, just feel like crap. And so I just, in order to avoid that whole spiral, I just said, let's take alcohol out of it. And another thing is, I have so many friends, and it was almost like a full-time job hanging out with this rotation of friends. And I never like to, if I'm hanging out with friends, it's really separate than business. I don't press any people that I know for business. I trust that if they have a question, they'll come to me. So when I hang out with friends, it's not business time. But I was, I realized, I think it's a lot. This business is a really cool way of learning a lot about yourself and how to sustain your mental health, your physical health, and your mindset towards to stay consistent. And so I really decided, I'm deciding on a select few friends. I'm cutting out alcohol, and I'm gonna work, and I'm gonna travel less. I've made these decisions to be very focused on my business this year. And I think you can have a little bit of success in the beginning without getting so extreme. But I think as you want to get higher up and better, I think you do have to refine a little bit more. And I think for me, it just started with my health and my mental health.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that point. When it comes to the proper mindset, I think that fitness is so important. I think with mental health, there's so many positives that for our mental health that come from physical fitness and nutrition. And I'm not an expert on either one, and I struggle with it all the time. But I definitely noticed a huge improvement in performance and attitude and everything when I'm when I'm consistently working out and consistently eating better. And no doubt, yeah, if you can abstain from alcohol, I mean, that's gonna make a big improvement in how you feel and how you
Yeah.
perform.
It's 100% changed the game for me. 1,000% changed the game for me.
Mm-hmm.
Is getting more clear, more direct, staying indoors more, not going out as much. I love it. I mean, I don't know. I'm more someone might be like, wow, that sounds really terrible, but I'm really enjoying this craft and building this craft, and I really see this as, how big could I build it,
Mm-hmm.
So
The word intentional gets thrown around a lot, but that's the word that came to mind when you started describing how we as business professionals should treat our bodies like athletes, and should really pay closer attention to who we spend our time with. We are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, right? So
I'll say that all
it
the time.
seems cliche, but there's so much of that is true, I believe. And just being intentional about what we eat, how we take care of our bodies, and who we spend time with. And yeah, I love that. I think that's really smart. And I would argue that I would be surprised if there's a highly successful CEO. If you were to poll 500 of the Fortune 500 CEOs, I would be surprised if the majority of them don't work out daily. And I also wouldn't be surprised if the majority of them abstain from alcohol.
So someone, as I've been going through this non-alcohol journey, it's been a month and a half now, and it comes up in discussion, because as I go out, I'm like, soda water and a lime, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, you don't drink, and so we talk about it, and someone told me that there's some pretty elite people in this world, a lot of people that are a part of the elite don't drink alcohol. And I don't know. I think it's really cool to not. I mean, maybe I'll go back after a year to having a drink here and there, but I'm just, yeah. I think that it just makes it so much easier to make clear-headed decisions. I would say for sure.
There's no downside. You
Yeah.
know, there's no downside to not drinking. So,
Yeah. I didn't mean to
um,
steer this whole conversation this direction, but
yeah,
it's like a recent like obsession of
sure.
mine.
Yeah, no, I love it. And that's actually, there's a big movement in this country and probably worldwide, but especially in America. And not so much with my generation. Like, I'm quite a bit considerably older than you, but I would say definitely with the generation that came behind me, are there's a definitely a big sober movement going on,
Yeah.
and I think we're going to see more and more of that. And I think, and that's certainly a positive. There's no downside to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's great. That's something I think for listeners to think about, and that's something that I'm going to continue to think about as well. Shelby, before I let you go, I wondered if you would share some advice with listeners as far as if they're early in their real estate journey. Cold calling, I think, is something that I think a new agent should explore. Open houses, strategic networking. What would be some advice or tips you would have for newer agents to kind of jumpstart their career?
I think my best piece of advice is burn the boats. So if you have you heard that saying?
Yep.
I think that
Cortez.
yeah, I think that putting yourself in positions that you can't go back is like some of the most magical pushing forward moments in my life. And when I allow myself to get sometimes, in the beginning of my career, and I was like, sometimes your mind wanders and should I have a backup plan? And I think you just have to say, nope, strap down, get it done. Like, you kind of put yourself in a little bit of jeopardy. I would say leveraging, if you feel like you can't really quite push yourself to getting to another level. I mean, I'm about to do it. I'm about to make my first assistant hire, and that's something that's always made me really nervous. And and for me, I see that psychologically as a burning the boats situation. To agree to pay someone a salary is, I'm now responsible for another person, is a little scary to me. And I think anything you can do to scare yourself into the next level, leverage that. And I remember, there were days when I couldn't get myself to cold call, and I texted my friend Erin and I said, if I don't call X number of people by the end of the day, I have to Zelle you $100. I have to. You have to check in with me, please, and ask me if I made these calls. And I've just leveraged other people to push myself because sometimes I just found it hard.
Accountability partner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's huge. That's really important. I think most of us need that. We need a coach. We need an accountability partner, a mentor, uh, or just a friend who can just help us stay accountable. I
And
love that.
a lot of people would love to be your accountability partner when you tell them that you'd pay them $100 if you
Right?
don't. I posted it on social media, and I had so many people that were like, "I'll be your accountability partner." Like,
Yeah, yeah.
$100. I'm like, "Damn, everybody's trying to take my money."
Yeah. I love it, but that's, yeah. I mean, burn the boats. That'll keep you motivated. It's
Yeah.
easy. Sometimes it's easy to. It's easier when you have no choice, I should say. I had a friend years ago who uh, we were both laid off from an IT company back in the early 2000s at the same time in Boston, and he had a family. I didn't. I was single. I was fine, and I remember he had to take a job for a while with UPS, where he'd have to get to the warehouse at like 5 a.m. So he was getting up at 3:30 in the morning, going to the warehouse, working for 4 or 5 hours, and then hitting interviews the rest of the day, 5 days a week. And I was like, man, how do you do that? And he goes, Jeff, it's easy. I have no choice. So, so, so I think that, burning the boats is a great concept for folks to kind of wrap their arms around.
Yeah.
I've done that a few times. I found it to be pretty effective, but it can be scary. It's risky for sure.
I think it's risky, but if anybody listening to this is as mentally tortured as I am, then you have to do some mental gymnastics to get yourself sometimes to do things, because I psyched myself and continue to psych myself out. Somebody that's in my pipeline has a $45 million house. I've never sold a $45 million house, and I continue to psych myself out with following up with him. What am I going to say? What am I going to tell him? Do I even know how to do comps on his house? Like, I just, I think you just have to continue to find ways to push yourself. Because it's not going to get easier, especially this year with, the number of inventory that's coming on market is in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, only less than 15% of it is getting sold. So, I mean, people can't make lateral moves these days. It's really the affordability of housing is really so this is a whole market discussion, but I think this year is going to be a very tough year for a lot of agents, and I love it because I feel like a lot of them are going to get out of the business. I know that sounds not nice, but it's just I like it when it gets a little tough.
I 1000% agree. I know so many agents who got out of the business in 08, 09, 10, 11, and the ones who stayed in thrived, just absolutely thrived. And I think that it's okay. It's okay for the industry to get a correction once in a while. It may be controversial. Some people may not, appreciate me saying that, but I think it's okay.
Yeah.
The downside is that, and I meant to ask you, but we wanted to talk about the Florida market, but it's going to have to be for another episode. But I did want to say that it does look like that 25 is going to be a challenging year for the Florida market.
100%. Yeah, I think it will be. It's getting tougher. I mean, the marketing dollars to sell things now to get exposure is just going up and up. I mean, everybody's doing crazy listing videos to get attention on their listings. I mean, some people are dropping the prices of their places. It's like a race to the bottom in some circumstances, and some, and you just have to continue to list. If you're a listing agent, you just have to take more listings and do your best to market the property at the right price. And not push the price. You cannot push the price unless it has a very unique feature, unless it has a unique lot, more land than normal. It has an incredible view. It's a point lot on the water, something unique about it, and you may be able to push the price, but otherwise you really have to price conservatively.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would love for you to circle back sometime, maybe next quarter or whenever it's convenient for you, and we could talk a little bit about the state of the market in Florida, because the Southeast in general is looking pretty solid, but the Florida market has its own unique challenges. So anyway, I know you're going to do fine, because you're going to crush it, because you got the right mindset and you're working hard at it and you're not afraid. Shelby, before I let you go, how can listeners learn more about you and connect with you? What would be the best way? Website, social media?
So you can find me on Instagram. That's where I'm most active, at Shelby Seidler, and that's Seidler. I got a website, shelbyseidler.com. Otherwise, everything's Shelby Seidler. So.
Awesome. I'll have the information, of course, in the description for this episode. And Shelby, I just want to thank you again so much for joining the podcast, taking time out of your busy schedule. This really means a lot to me, and I look forward to staying in touch and continuing to keep up with you on your journey.
I love that. Can I do so this is another aspect since I post on Instagram. Can I do a quick
Mhm.
picture for Instagram?
Of course.
Okay, real quick. I'm just gonna do this. There we go.
All
Perfect.
right.
That came out amazing. Okay, I'll
Oh,
tag you.
good. Awesome. Well, hang on the line for me
Okay.
after I hit stop here. Shelby, thanks again so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.